Well, it looks like a very captivating trailer, and of course, the movie is generating buzz for all the right reasons. But meanwhile, let's shift our focus to our biggest focus this hour. US President Donald Trump today suggested that Washington could soon reach a trade agreement with India, emphasizing that the two countries have now strong bilateral ties. In fact, the US President said, and I'm quoting him, if you look at India and Pakistan, so I'm doing a trade deal with India and I have great respect and love, as you know, for the Prime Minister. We have a great relationship. In fact, Trump was speaking at a luncheon with APEC CEOs.
Absolutely, Ashish. And in fact, talking about the specifics of the trade deal, well, corn and soybeans have figured prominently in negotiations with the United States. In fact, the country is eager to sell these two agri products to India. In fact, India has increasingly turned to corn to boost ethanol output as well. But its rules bar ethanol made from imported grains and prohibit genetically modified crops. So what's in store as far as the India-US trade deal is concerned? Ladies and gentlemen, before we go on to our guests, first, let's listen into what Donald Trump, the US president, had to say about the Prime Minister and, of course, about that impending trade deal with India.
I'm doing a trade deal with India, and I have great respect and love. As you know, for Prime Minister Modi, we have a great relationship. We can't make a trade deal with you. No, we must make a trade deal. I said, no, we can't. You're starting a war with Pakistan. We're not going to do it. And then I called Pakistan. I said, we're not going to do trade with you because you're fighting with India. And, you know, two nuclear nations. And they said, no, you should let us fight. They both said that. You know, they're warring. They're strong people, I'll tell you what. Prime Minister Modi is the nicest looking guy. He says, and he looks like you'd like to have your father. Like, he's a killer. He's tough as hell. No, we will fight. I said, whoa, this is the same man that I know. But after a little while, and they're good people, and after literally 2 days, they called up and they said, we understand, and they stopped fighting. How is that? Isn't that amazing? Now, you think Biden would have done that? I don't think so. Most people wouldn't have thought of it, but, you know, they wouldn't have thought of it. No, but here we are, we're doing deals. So you add an extra sentence, and you say you have to stop shooting at each other. 7 planes were shot down. You have to stop the war.
Well, classic Trump there, of course, summing up everything that's happening around the world in his own fashion. Joining us right now, our guests on the panel, Pawan Kumarji, President, Seafood Exporters Association of India, Sunil Subramaniam, market expert, and CA Aditya Sesh, who is the member of the Government of India, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast here. It's, of course, a fascinating conversation. We just heard Donald Trump there talk about the India-US relationship and, of course, his personal rapport with the Prime Minister as well in his own fashion. Aditya, let's start with you now. Well, of course, we talk about the situation that India is under, particularly when it comes to the rural side of the US and the Republican relation with that and the relation of Prime Minister Modi with the farmers in India. Now, ISMA basically says that sugar-based ethanol allocations have been sharply reduced and it could leave our sugar mills with surplus stock and basically it will hurt our farmers. On the other hand, the US is also keen to export its corn to India, given India's increased dependence on corn to boost ethanol output. So what's the way forward here? It looks like India is in a pretty corny situation.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a wonderful thing to be back. I would like to say that it is not as simple as it seems. We will have to do symbolic buys maybe, but essentially our situation is that the ISMA is asking for more allocation, and that is fair because what we are doing right now is we are using corn and grains to produce ethanol. Maybe 28-72 is, I think, the ratio, and therefore, given that the sugar prices have softened, it makes sense for the ISMA to ask for more allocation. At the same time, we can't be importing corn because as it is, our farmers are facing a situation where the corn prices are, the trade prices are close to half of what the MSP is given, and therefore that is also difficult. And let me tell you that no practical politician will ever allow import of agriculture goods into India. And this is not just for India. I mean, you go to Europe, you get the same feel. I mean, it's not that the farmer community will not allow it, and rightly so. So it is a situation where we are seeing 3 different groups that are stakeholders in the whole process. So on one side, you have the corn farmers who are having a problem in India because they are not getting the correct prices for MSP. On the other hand, ISMA is asking for more allocation. And on the other side, US is pushing for corn imports. I mean, just like maybe and practically just like how you would buy some oil from the US, you might buy a little corn for maybe for ethanol, but that will largely be
Absolutely, Mr.
symbolic.
Sesh.
We have to take we have to take care of our farmers. We have
Right,
to take
Mr.
care
Sesh,
of our
this absolutely, we have to. And this is something that India has reiterated over and over again. We've also said that we've not opened our agri market for any of the trade deals that we've done in the past or the ones that are currently being negotiated. But having said that, let me come to you, Mr. Subramaniam. Now, pushing agri exports for the United States, just like energy, is a priority. And that is something that we've seen with China as well in the build-up to that big meeting that is all set to happen tomorrow. But the fact is that the United States only employs close to just 2% of the US population as far as agri is concerned, and that really contributes less than 1% to the nation's GDP. So why is the US not willing to accede on the issue of agriculture?
Two reasons for that. First is that it's the only place where US production is competitive with the rest of the world. And the reason for that is the high degree of mechanization in their agriculture. I agree that very little of the population works there, but because of the huge size of the farms and the huge the harvesters and everything that they have, they are able to produce the corn and the soya at a good profit from an international price perspective. So that's where US products are competitive. So that's one reason. The second reason why the pressure is suddenly built up is that China, as a counterattack to Trump's tantrums, has drastically reduced their soya import from US tremendously. So the US is left with surplus soya now, and so they're trying to find alternative markets, and that's where the whole situation comes up. And the other challenge, of course, as far as India is concerned, is the genetic modification that US rampantly allows. And as you know, Indian agriculture, we have protected it from GM, plus India's exports into Europe. Right, Europe has got very strict rules on genetic modification. So India allows any GM crops here. We have had it. US exports to Europe will be severely affected. So that's a red line for us in terms of genetically modified. Now, if non-GM corn or soya India is to buy, soya we don't have much use for, but corn can be used for ethanol, as the previous speaker said. And there's a political challenge because the farmer lobby, as you know, is very strong. Any farm reforms have always been stymied by massive protests and all of that. So it is a very delicate line that the government has to walk in terms of this whole issue.
Absolutely.
And I don't see that
Mr.
easy
Sunil,
solution.
you gave a
Yeah.
couple of reasons for this, and I have a quick follow-up question there. The
Yeah.
two reasons that you've given are very technical, and of course they're appropriate as well. But how much do you think is the political pressure also playing a role in this? The fact that the US is now pressurizing not just China but also India as well to buy corn and soybean as well. Because if you look at the election, the chart as well, a majority of the Republican votes did come from the rural areas. The farming community there is very strongly Republican. Corn also is a major factor when it comes to that. So do you think it's Donald Trump now trying to play to local politics, and in an attempt to do that, he's now pressurizing some of his closest allies to purchase corn and soybean?
No, that's the third reason, and the reason is not because of employment, as Sumita Kare said that very little of, but that's a huge financing lobby. The agricultural lobby, the rich farmers are huge financiers of Mr. Trump. So yes, so that's the third factor which is there. In addition to the two technical factors I said, it's the fact that the U.S. agricultural lobby supports Trump in a big way through money. So yes, he needs to take care of them. And as you know, there's a primary elections coming up halfway through, which the Republican Party needs to win. So that is undoubtedly also a thing that is at play. And that's probably what is making him talk to China, because China has twisted America by reducing their soya bean imports. So yes, all three factors are at play here.
Right, Mr. Subramaniam. And in fact, Mr. Pavan, I'll come to you in just a bit. But let me also ask one another question to Mr. Sesh. Mr. Sesh, we've spoken about the sensitivities that India has with respect to agri purchases. And of course, that's been a thorny issue with China as well. But what are our options in terms of not really just not compromising on the interests of farmers, but also making sure that a deal happens?
I'll tell you, we have no options. From 1947, all our governments have made sure that we don't import agriculture goods, especially the GMO variety. So there is very little that we can do. We may do some optical purchases. That is about it. I often say that when you cannot take care of your agriculture community, it can spread to civil strife. That's how sensitive it is. I mean, I use the word arajakta. We should not get into a situation where we have to import at the cost of our own farmers. Let me go to milk. We are the largest producer of milk in the world. I don't see a need why we have to import milk, especially given that it is GMO milk. We have ever been against GMO milk. So there is hardly anything that you can do, but you can do some. Symbolic purchases. You can perhaps do some purchases for animal feed, for like your dog feed and dog food and all that. You may do that, but I think that's about where we stand, and we really have no choices. Let me also add to what Sunilji said, that in the
So
United
let's
States, the
let's also
farming
get in
families are
Mr.
just
Pawan
about.
here, because you're making a very interesting point. The fact that this is something that concerns a majority of the population, and the sort of the way it can backfire. Not sure if the Indian government is ready for that. Mr. Pawan, now the US is basically pressing India to allow corn imports, reportedly with an argument that it will solely be used for ethanol and won't enter agriculture. Do you think this assurance is going to be enough, even if the Indian government finds a way to somehow allow corn to come in and only limit it to ethanol? Do you think the farming community in India is going to take that lightly?
I'm not an expert in like my co-speakers in terms of the farm products like soya and maize. But I'll bring it around my seafood perspective. Yes, when it comes to seafood, US is one of the biggest markets, and any sort of a deal which happens between India and US is welcome. But having said that, we would also say, but we don't want the government, nor will the government compromise on the Indian requirements. That is, they are very sensitive to the Indian farmers. I think that also answers your question. We don't want them to compromise, but at the same time, yes, any deal which is fair from both the sides, I think it should go through. We would definitely welcome that, but not at the cost of the Indian farmers.
Right. Right, Mr. Pavan, and that is something we'll have to see how that issue is really handled by the Indian side to protect the interests of farmers. Let me go back to Mr. Sesh. Mr. Sesh, we were essentially talking about, what are India's options, and you said that there are none. But don't you think that we could possibly be looking at safeguards which could be offered and which could be related to, for instance, a quota-based entry of US agri imports into India for non-agri use, which could perhaps be used to, meet, for instance, India's biofuel targets. So for non-agri products, for the non-agri sector, do you think that is an option?
But so when you say that, so theoretically it is possible, and maybe in the the mini deal that will come up, it may well be there. But remember, whenever you do anything with bio deal, ethanol is also a part of that, and then you have sugar cane that is affected. So it is not a zero sum game. I mean, it's not a zero sum game, because what affects one will affect everything else. That is a problem. And what we do not realize is that in the United States, it's very easy to deal with the farmers' lobby, because there are just about 20,000 farmer families. The average acreage is 443 or 444 acres per farming family. And as Sunilji said, that they're highly aggregated. But India is not like that. Almost 50% of our labor force is coming from the farms. So our problem is different, and that has got to be understood. There can be quid pro quos that can be offered. In place of agri produce, maybe we will import oil, which we always need. Maybe we'll do something for animal feed. And I mean, even there, we have certain faith-based beliefs. Our cows cannot be eating something that is not organic. So it's not going to be easy. We'll have to take it step by step. At the same time, we want to be dealing with the United States. We are not going to live in an insular world. We will have to thrash it out one by one, line by line, item by item. So it is going to be protracted. Expect no big deal in the next few months. We will have a mini deal. We'll have something given here, something taken here. I think from a geopolitical level, it is a question of who blinks first and how much do you blink.
Absolutely. I think we'll, of course, have to wait and watch what really pans out. And I have a follow-up question for Pawan there, because he, of course, said that he'll be able to help us understand better as far as the exports are concerned. Pawan, now, even if we assume that India concedes slightly as far as the corn imports are concerned, despite all the internal resistance, as Mr. Sesh pointed out, do you think the backlash and all the effort will be worthwhile? Do you see any real market gain as far as Indian exports are concerned, like gems, shrimp, pharma, or even otherwise?
No, no. As far as the US destination is concerned, yes, there is definitely a fall in the exports. I can talk about shrimp because that's what we've been seeing day in and day out for the past 3 or 4 months. There is a decline in exports, but we are quickly trying to find alternate markets. It is going to be slightly, it is challenging for the time being. And we look forward, even if, as one of my colleagues suggested in the panel, even if a mini deal which has some elements where the other exports can be taken care of, that would be welcome.
Right. Let me go back to Mr. Sesh. Mr. Sesh, we were essentially talking about, a couple of things that you spoke about. That a mini deal is possible and that a full-fledged deal is not possible, at least in the next few months. But government sources have actually declined that there will be a mini deal. They're looking at the first tranche of the bilateral trade agreement that both the sides are negotiating by the fall, by November end, which technically means. And secondly, you also spoke about the thorny issues that are persisting. Then, in that case, is a deal happening at all? Because India is not going to accede to agri issues, given the kind of sensitivities that we have. And of course, we do have some major elections that are coming up, and this could be a political hot potato for the government.
Our problem, Sumita, is that we are in an election mode throughout the year. And that is why we should have one nation, one vote, because these things keep on coming up. My impression is it will be a little bit of a give and take. It'll be a little item here, a little item there. We'll have to manage the optics of both the countries, because essentially the population of both the countries want some wins. So, things like testing of the agriculture standards, maybe a little dilution here, a little dilution there, a reduction in some paperwork. These can be classified as wins. And therefore, as we go along, these are the little things that will come out. A few exports from India may be allowed. But at the end of the day, let me tell you, we are moving into a situation that no country will be importing just because the other country wants you to import. It will be based on whether there is value in the deal, whether it makes sense, whether a country is deficient in what you want to export to them, or what they want to import. So these things actually will play a major role in what will be allowed or whether some quotas will be given. And therefore, at the end of the day, in my opinion, it is the demand in the host country, the value of the exporting country, the price at which the exporting country gives, and the quality. These are fundamentals that will eventually pan out once we get over this geopolitical noise.
Absolutely. Mr. Shesh, that's one of the biggest considerations that I believe, for both leaders, for both Donald Trump as well as for Narendra Modi, the fact that every decision that they take as far as this trade deal is concerned, yes, it will benefit a bigger community as far as, business is concerned. But again, local politics also has to be kept in focus, and that is going to be a major factor that will dictate what really pans out. Mr. Pawan Kumar, Sunil Subramaniam, and Aditya Sesh, really appreciate you joining us on the broadcast here, helping us understand the broader contours of this entire discussion and what really could pan out of this entire deal, and also how important it's going to be for both leaders to ensure that there's not just a deal, but a deal where it at least appears like their country has won. With that, viewers, it's time for a short break on India Tonight. Lots more lined up on the other side. We'll be right back.